Greetings, I am Pete Olson, camera shy assistant director of the NIU Art Museum in DeKalb, Illinois. Francisco Goya y Lucentias was once court painter to the King of Spain. Now 2 of his etchings hang on the walls of my bedroom. Most of Goya's prints were released in bound sets with brief accompanying texts. In that regard, they presaged the format of the graphic novel, although each of Goya's prints stands alone. They are related thematically, but don't follow each other in a narrative sequence. He was born in 1746 and died in 1828. I own 4 of the 80 prints from the satirical series Los Caprichos, published in 1799 when the artist was 53 years old, which is the exact age I am right now. That's a bittersweet realization. It helps me identify with the Spanish artist, but it also reminds me that I have not achieved anything remotely approaching the significance of Los Caprichos. Well, I will do the next best thing. I will attempt to explain them. The first print we will consider is titled Nadie se conoce in the original Spanish, which translates into English as Nobody Knows Himself. The accompanying text reads, "The world is a masquerade. Face, dress, and voice, all are false. All wish to appear what they are not. All deceive and do not even know themselves." I think the content speaks for itself, so I will talk a bit about Goya's technique. A new intaglio printmaking technique was invented just in time for Goya to experiment with it. Aquatint, as the name implies, was intended to allow etchings, printed in multiples, to mimic the look of one-of-a-kind ink-wash drawings. The plate was coated with powdered rosin, with just enough space between the specks to let acid etch around them. The longer the plate was left in the acid bath, the darker the aquatint got. On this figure, we can clearly see where varnish was painted on the plate to stop out the acid and leave the copper plate below smooth so it prints as white. When looking at any work of art, shift your focus from distracting surface detail by squinting. Although not very large, slightly smaller than 8 by 5 inches on average, the prints in Los Caprichos hold up as some of the boldest and most powerful compositions in all of art history, regardless of scale. Ya van desplumados, there they go plucked or fleeced, is the title of this print. If they have already been plucked, get them out. There will be others coming along, says the accompanying text. One of the main ingredients in the recipe for satire is double entendre. Plucked chickens equals people swindled out of their money. This is made even more obvious and grotesque by drawing chickens with human heads. Shoo them away. They have served their purpose and are now worthless. They seem to be jumping out a window under the misapprehension they can fly. They will probably fall to their deaths. Perhaps a butcher awaits them below. It is not hard to come to this conclusion. Goya begins a story, and the viewer picks it up from there and imagines how it might continue. The viewer thus becomes an active participant in developing a narrative. By the way, once you buy a Goya print, it's yours to do with whatever you want. Some people like to color them in. I guess they just don't like black and white prints. One final observation. Looking closely reveals what appears to be a rosary, perhaps a subtle reference to the Catholic Church. These prints were published during the Spanish Inquisition, so Goya had to be careful to avoid persecution. This print underscores the dangerous times in which Goya lived. The title, "Nothing Could Be Done About It," reflects an attitude that the common man is powerless against a corrupt system. But satire is tricky. Is Goya expressing his own fatalist outlook or criticizing the apathy of the society around him? They are persecuting this saintly woman to death. After having signed her death sentence, they take her out in triumph. She has indeed deserved a triumph, and if they do it to insult her, they are wasting time. No one can shame someone who has nothing to be ashamed of, reads the accompanying text. Goya's use of aquatint creates the focal point. Baroque passages of light and dark move through the crowd. In back are two officials with undersized ceremonial swords. Look at their faces. These guys are not the sharpest tools in the shed. They wouldn't even see this as a satirical image as long as their outfits look important. The final print is titled A Gift for the Master. The text reads, "That is quite right. They would be ungrateful pupils not to visit their professor to whom they owe everything they know in their diabolical science." References to witchcraft pervade Los Capriccios, evoking a grotesque hyperbole of superstition, read religion, often masquerading as education. One final etching lesson. Lines become darker the longer they are exposed to acid, just like areas of aquatint. Here is a clear example of that phenomenon. The darker lines come forward and the lighter lines recede. Thank you for joining me on this excursion through the mind of Francisco Goya.